Welcome to the A Paratrooper and a Yogi Walk Into a Bar pod.
Start again.
You think? Welcome to the A Paratrooper and a Yogi Walk Into a Bar podcast. We are back at the bar, and there he is, the hero of HJS, Andrew Fox. And that's Mr. Andrew Fox on Substack and X.
And the teetotal vegan I've just run into, who's taken a break from bending herself into a pretzel on an hourly basis, is the amazing Shana Meyerson, who is the host of the Yoga War podcast, which you can find not only on YouTube, but wherever you do your podcast listening.
Yes. And Andrew, before we get into the big and obvious story, which is Syria, I want to take a minute or two or maybe three to mention super important, totally sub-radar developments in the cesspool of dictators, terrorists, and anti-Semitic moral rot that we affectionately call the United Nations. And the Trump effect. So insert groan or whatever.
Yeah, I'll just add it to the Epstein files. It'll be fine.
They don't exist, so with that
But
might as
they
well.
did like before the election. I don't understand what's going on.
Well, it's a little bit of hocus pocus, but that just doesn't even exist either. We could just delete that, erase that, and like it never even happened.
No, the CIA are coming for us now. We've mentioned it. That's it. This is done.
Well, they're coming for you. I actually support Trump and all that, not in Epstein, but in the pro-Israel world. So let me start by noting that it was Trump 45 who originally defunded the Hamas-run UN Relief and Works Agency, otherwise known as UNRWA. Then Biden refunded them, not like gave them a refund, but funded them again, and then defunded them again when it came into the open that dozens of UNRWA employees actively partook in the actual massacre, kidnappings, and atrocities of 10/7. Oops, Biden. I mean, clearly that was an honest mistake, which brings us to Trump 47 with a defunded UNRWA. Now, stack on that the recent U.S. sanctions on the unapologetically anti-Semitic UN Special Rapporteur for the undermining of Israel, Francesca Albanese.
Albanese, Italian.
Albanese. Oh, I said it right this time.
Albanese.
I said it wrong.
I hate the Jews, Albanese.
When I'm in Italy, like everybody laughs. Like there are people who make shorts of how poorly I pronounce everything. So let's go with Albanese. But I think the hand gesture is even more important. Anyway, they sanction her. Now we're getting somewhere, hopefully to the point where she's finally fired, but I won't hold my breath. Guterres's UN loves a good Jew hater. But wait, someone is paying attention. Last week, all three members of the UN Commission for the Delegitimization and Destruction of the Jewish State quietly quit and dissolved the body. It turns out none of them want to be banned from America and have their assets seized for witch hunting Jews. In other words, for, well, being themselves. We'll see who's willing to step in and take their place, as they'll have a shelf life shorter than a Hamas commander. Oh, wait, there goes another one. Let's give a good shalom, Hamas. And then in other news, per Trump's suggestion, France and Saudi Arabia have literally bowed out of their own UN summit to recognize a Palestinian state. And just today, Trump pulled the US out of UNESCO, again, for its anti-American and anti-Israel bias. Andrew, I'm going to make a side note. He is the best friend Israel has ever had in the White House. Go ahead and cringe. It's true. Yeah? Yeah. Okay, that wasn't a cringe. It was an eyebrow raise. Well, keep in mind that all of this has been done without a confirmed U.S. ambassador to the UN. Imagine what will be done when we have an official seat at the table again, or even better, in my dreams. I mean, really, probably just in my dreams, when the US leaves the United Nations of moral depravity altogether and kicks them out of New York. That being said, yesterday, 28 major countries called for an immediate end to the war in Gaza, mostly in response to Hamas lies and propaganda, with the hostages only mentioned as an afterthought. It's only thanks to the US veto that any sort of binding resolution cannot pass in the UN right now. That's my soapbox for the day. Andrew, response?
Yeah, I mean the letter is mind-blowing. It really is mind-blowing. I mean, it ignores the fact that Hamas are the ones who turned down the ceasefire deal. Again, they tried to shift blame onto Bibi about changing the goalposts and all this sort of nonsense, but we know it's bullshit. We know they're deeply, deeply harmed by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. And they're doing everything they can to have the aid put back into the UN's hands so that they can get Hamas can get their hands on it again. So it's absolutely nakedly obvious that this is very much more nuanced than these 28 countries have made out. And on top of that, there are ceasefire negotiations going on, and all they've just done is empower Hamas to dig their heels in. Like, it's actually made peace less likely with this stupid statement. And it just goes to show the extent to which Western societies are just infiltrated with this stupidity, with this wave of lies that's soaking every part of our information environment. It's scary how effective it is as well. Yeah, what can you do apart from keep trying to tell the truth? And I've done some good digging on the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation today, with hopefully more to come. And it's obviously shock horror, a lot more nuanced than people make out. And the killer point to make here is there isn't enough food going into Gaza. There's about 1.5 meals per person per day going in through the GHF, which isn't enough. But there is tons of the stuff stockpiled at Kerem Shalom, and the UN are refusing to distribute it and work with the GHF. They would rather see Gazans starve than work with the GHF. There's nothing stopping them apart from the fact that they're refusing. So, you know, how can you get around the evil of this magnitude from the United Nations? They would literally rather see people starve than work with the Israelis, which is mind blowing, mind blowing.
It's also transparent that what's mind blowing to me is it's like, are they this stupid or is this deliberate? I really can't wrap my head around it. And for people who don't know about this 28 country statement that's been made, if you can name a country, it's probably one of the countries besides the United States.
Yeah, including the UK, unfortunately, and embarrassingly, but not surprisingly. But such is the toxic mood that's been created by the United Nations, by the media. And there is a fantastic paper coming out very soon. It's already out in Hebrew, but that probably doesn't apply to most of our audience. The English version is coming out very imminently. It's by professors Danny Orbach, Jonathan Boxman, and a couple of others. And it essentially breaks down how this information environment has been completely corrupted, and all the biases and the paradoxes that come into it. And when it comes out, we will do an episode on it because it's fantastic. But I'm just going to teaser trail it because it's so good. I've had a sneak preview, and at least it explains it. It doesn't fix it. It doesn't cure the problem, but at least we have more ammunition in our back pockets trying to fight this nonsense if we know how it works.
Yeah, we have from the start. The facts are on our side. The problem is we live in a post-factual world.
We do. We do. Although there are some facts that are indisputable, and that is that there is a massacre going on in Syria, and absolutely nobody, apart from a few terminally online people on Twitter, are talking about it. It's blowing my mind. You know, almost as many people have been killed in southern Syria as were killed on 7th of October. Slaughter of the nature of 7th of October, absolute horror videos real snuff porn stuff coming out of South Syria. It's brutal to watch. And yet we are hearing a deafening silence. Countries are putting 28 signatory letters together condemning Israel. Where is the 28 country letter condemning what the militias and the government forces in Syria are doing in the south right now? It's quite astonishing. And it's as if people don't have the capacity to care about two things at once. Now, you can care about Gaza. I care about Gaza. I don't want people to starve to death in Gaza. I want a better solution than the one that's currently being presented. And you know, there should be a better solution. You know, I don't want to see people starving to death. That's appalling. But by the same token, I don't want to see people slaughtered in Syria either. And I'm happy to say that both are terrible. And people need to, you know, have a consistency in their morality. Um, and when you see a bad thing, say it's bad. Even if, you know, we're seeing the polarized extremes as well. They're like, oh, this wouldn't have happened under Assad. And you're like, what are you talking about? Like Tommy Robinson today was posting like at least Assad, you know, protected Syria's Christians. It's like, yeah, but he also used chemical weapons on his own people. Like, how can the moral inconsistency blows my mind.
But we're talking about a
Yeah.
world who thinks that Chamberlain was the bad guy in World War II, Hitler was the good guy, that Osama bin Laden was the good guy on 9/11, and that America is the bad guy. And of course, that Hamas was the good guy on 10/7, and Israel's the bad guy. So as much as it shocks me to the core, I can't say that it surprises me at all.
Mm. Yeah, and I guess that's the real tragedy is actually I'm not surprised. I'm just I don't know, dismayed, disappointed, appalled. The national media, you know, to be fair, Alex Crawford has had a shock in Gaza, but at least she made the effort to actually get out on the ground in Sueda and see what was going on with her own eyes. So while she is useless on Israel, at least she's made the effort to get out there and report on it. I haven't tracked the whole report. I'm sure she found some way to blame Israel. And that's probably the next point to cover is that the only country in the world that's doing anything about this is Israel with the airstrikes to protect the Druze community. You know, we've seen Druze Israelis flooding over the border and creating a bit of a security hazard. You know, well intentioned, but not wise. And Bibi had to go on TV to appeal to them to not do that and let the IDF do their work, and they have done their work pretty well, it would seem. But it's a complicated mess of a situation in Syria. There's no clear candidate who's suitable to take over in Damascus. It's a weird situation, but Jelani or Al-Sharaa or whatever we're calling him is probably potentially maybe the best guy, even in spite of this, because everyone else is so horrible. You know, if you go to the Turkish-backed SNA, they're even worse than HTS. And if you look at the atrocities committed by terror group in Syria across the last few years, HTS is actually completely at the bottom of it. You know, they've been comparatively good for all the psychotic terror groups. They are the least psychotic terror group, which is a desperate state of affairs for Syria. And when Assad fell, you know, it could have gone one of two ways. And I remember doing TV interviews at the time, and I said, look, there's a chance, there's a thin chance this might turn out okay, and he might be able to unify the country and change direction. But unfortunately, it seems that he's either unwilling or unable to control the more radical elements in this sort of weird coalition of jihadis.
Yeah,
And that bodes very, very poorly for Syria's future.
before we move too far forward, can we rewind for 1 second about
Mm.
Israeli Jews that Druze, that have
Druze.
crossed in? Because I don't want to gloss over this point. The
Mm.
Druze community is extraordinary loyal to wherever they are, any nation. It's the nature of the Druze to blend into any population, and they are an extraordinarily important part of the fabric of Israel. But I have a friend who is Druze who has explained everything to me, and the Druze community in the world is very small, but they are so intricate that a Druze in Israel considers any Druze in Syria to be literal family. So we have 1,000 Druze, and I understand the passion, who have crossed over illegally into Syria to fight. My concern is that one or more of them will be taken hostage. There was a report yesterday that one of them was taken hostage, but Al-Jilani actually said that they needed to be released, which surprised me. But one thing I do want to say, after October 7th, there were a lot of proportionality comparisons made between 10/7 and 9/11, right? So we were talking about 1,200 of 10 million Israelis who were killed, as opposed to approximately 3,000 out of 350 million Americans. It was something like dozens of 9/11s, people said, and how personal it was. Let's think about Syria. We're talking, again, 1,200 people, what a weird coincidence, out of a druze community of just 700,000 people. The proportion is staggering. There is not a single member of that community who is not touched by these atrocities.
Yeah, it's just a brutal statistic when you frame it like that, isn't it? And you know, one of the greatest crimes of the last 20 months, well, now try and narrow it down, not greatest crimes, but one of the most damaging phenomena has been this weaponization of language, where apartheid no longer means anything. Colonialization just doesn't mean anything now, and more importantly, genocide doesn't mean anything, because now it's been falsely thrown around for so long that actually now we're seeing something that looks like a real genocide. We actually don't have the words to describe it, because you go, that's a genocide, and you'll get idiots going, me, just like Gaza. And it just completely denudes the term of all its kind of meaning. And now we've got this horrible situation. We don't actually have a word to label it other than slaughter or massacre, which frankly doesn't do justice to what's going on. So it's, God damn those people for the last 20 months who've just been trying to weaponize language just to get one over on the Israelis. We said it, we said all along that this would happen, and here we are. And it's just tragic to watch it happening and unfolding in front of us.
Yeah, I mean, tragic is one word. For me, I don't exaggerate. It's so physically sickening. It makes me hard to go on with my day when I see what's going on the post-trauma of 10/7 is just repeating for the people who have followed. But it's excruciating. But the other thing that is like so bad and wrong is that not only are people not talking about what's happening, but the people who are literally telling the Druze that they need to stand down. Exactly what happened after 10/7. People literally expected the Israelis to lie down and die. In hashtag funny not funny, because I'm actually serious. I'm wondering if people are confusing Druze with Jews, because if you don't say it as clearly as I just said it, it sounds like the same word. And we're talking about people who have no idea what river, no idea what sea, no idea what they're talking about. And I'm willing to bet that a whole bunch of them just think this is another massacre of Jews. And that's one of the reasons it does not matter.
It's guaranteed that there's people out there Googling what druze is. 100%. 100% they don't have a clue, or they don't even realize who they are, what their beliefs are, or who they're connected to. And there's so many things that could go wrong going forward from here. The potential here for sort of regional escalation is really quite worrying, in the sense that instability in Syria gives Iran a chance to get a foothold back in the area. It might overspill to Druze and Alawite communities in Lebanon. What happens if, the Houthis decide to escalate because Israel's striking Syria? There's so many ways this could spin out of control. And yeah, it's a deeply worrying situation, and we'll watch to see how it unfolds.
Well, I mean, so a lot of people, everyone is condemning Israel for actually stepping in to defend a group that is going through a genocide, a slaughter, whatever you want to call it. But on top of the fact that these condemnations are coming in, because people want to know, like, what does Israel have anything to do? What business do they have in Syria? And it's called, like, doing the right thing. Like, when did humanity go so far awry that you actually condemn the only country on earth that's willing to step in and defend a largely helpless at this point population because of the sheer numbers. But something else, and we have to stop mitigating things because there may be other motives. Ulterior motives are other motives. They're not wrong or bad, but having terrorists on the border of Syria and Israel once again presents an honest to goodness other existential threat once again to Israel. Israel is not going to put up with this anymore. And yesterday, one of the captured Syrian terrorists revealed that their plan was to plow through the Druze, literally his words, to Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Israel is just like, hell to the no. This is not going to happen again.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always slightly skeptical of testimony that comes under interrogation. I think we have to be slightly careful with that. But you don't stick two divisions on the border if you're just paying lip service to the threat. You know, airstrikes is one thing, but actually shifting two divisions of ground forces because you're that worried. I mean, you don't do that just for show. So I think that's fairly telling about the level of threat that Israel places on what could happen in a worst case scenario. So yeah, it's you know, yes, of course, there's realpolitik involved. It's that's just the way of the world. That's how it works. But you know, I think it would be a huge stretch to suggest that protecting the Druze is anything but the right thing to do. I don't see how you could come to any other conclusion, quite frankly, unless you are so addled by Palestinianism, by Palestine sanity, by Jude and Haas, by anti-Semitism that you can't see Israel doing anything good, in which case you don't really have a valid contribution to make to the discussion, quite frankly.
But why
Um,
isn't anyone else stepping in? Why isn't anyone else stepping in is the
well,
bigger.
who else is capable at the moment? I mean, that's the question. Um, there's no countries in the region that could do it, which leaves
Mhm.
basically the USA. Turkey aren't going to do it because they're backing the guys that are doing the slaughter. The USA doesn't need to do it because Israel's got it in hand. And obviously, American involvement comes with a heavy political load, especially with Mr. Trump trying to get his peace prize. Um, so,
Make
like,
sure to get the Trump dig in. We
but who
can't get
else is
through an
there?
episode
You know,
without it.
who else is there? You know, there's only Israel, unfortunately, and actually, I think Israel, maybe in some ways, are finding the same burden that America's found for a long time. That actually, with being the only superpower, comes great responsibility, unfortunately. And that does mean you sometimes have to do military stuff that you don't necessarily want to do, unless you get a monster in the White House who just burns all his allies apart from one. But you know, that's how it goes.
What are your thoughts on the ceasefire, Andrew?
Well, look, you know, I think they should have ceased fire a long time ago. I would have liked to seen
Oh, I'm sorry, I mean in Syria.
oh, in Syria. Sorry, I thought you meant the Gaza. I
No,
thought
we're
we were
talking about Syria.
switching fire to Gaza. Look, the ceasefire is, it is what it is. You know, it boils down to that eternal question: is al-Sharaa, is al-Jalani ordering this, or has he just lost control? And if he's just lost control, then it doesn't have a very high chance of succeeding. But if it does succeed, it means he did have control. So if he did have control, that means that he knew the massacres were happening and had control over them happening. So he's on a catch-22 here because if it fails, it means he's lost control. If it doesn't fail, it means that he's behind the massacres. So that's a really interesting one to watch, I think.
Yeah, I mean the way that I see the ceasefire, that I have to put it in air quotes, the ceasefire in Syria right now is that this was like an announcement by US, Turkey, and Jordan that it was just going to happen. It's very eerily reminiscent of, just Trump says something is over, like the 12-day Iran war, and Bibi's like, okay, I guess it's over. Luckily, Trump has not done that yet with Gaza. But again, they're telling they're telling the Druze to stand down, and this is just the way it's going to be, and that's very upsetting to me. However, as far as Israel and Syria is concerned, I think that there's, even though I know there's like a lot of complication in opposition to the potential like peace talks between the two parties, because like all that you were saying, can al-Jilani be trusted? Can he either gain control or, or is he in control? Both are a no-win situation. But let me just say that supporting a potential like stabilization agreement does not mean that we're assuming al-Jilani is anything but an Al-Qaeda and ISIS monster in humanoid clothing. But the question is whether the potential like strategic gains will outweigh the possible losses, because I personally don't think that Israel will accept any more losses at this point. They're 100 times more powerful than Syria. They're, knock wood, are no hostages at this point. God willing, there won't be. And there's no real reason for Israel to like compromise on anything. I think that ensuring that Iranian influence no longer plays a role on Israel's northeastern border is a pretty big reward for swallowing the jagged pill of shaking hands with an Islamist terrorist. I mean, sadly, like it or not, this is the new world order, and terrorists now have a seat at the table. And I don't see how we take that musical chair away at this point.
Until it all blows up in your faces in 10 to 15 years' time. But we'll see and wait how it develops.
You think we have that long?
Who knows? Who knows? Iran are testing space rockets even this week. Iran are going nowhere. They're going to play a long game as they always do. This isn't going anywhere anytime soon, which means that we'll always have something to talk about. But
Hooray for longevity of the paratrooper and a Yogi Walk Into a Bar podcast.
I mean, I'd rather have peace in the Middle East, but
Man.
just got to take what we can get, unfortunately. Cool. So on that note, I think we bring this week's discussion to a close. And if you have enjoyed it, please do like and subscribe and comment below, because we do like to hear from you and see how we're doing. And if you have any questions you want clarifying, please feel free to go for it, because we'd be delighted.
Amen. And let me just add that you please hit the bell so that you receive notifications every time we have a new episode.
It's like Rocky, ding, ding.
Just like Rocky. I was thinking more like a deli counter, but Rocky's a better analogy.
Rocky's always a good analogy. You can't go wrong.
Okay, I'm going to do some background music while you say bye. Dun 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 dun
Go,
dun
Adrian.
dun
Go. Aren't you tuneful? Right. See you next time. Thank you. Cheers.
L'chaim. See you next time.